All
You're
right,
welcome.
excellent. Captions. I know people caption settings. How do we start the captions? If Nina, I'm gonna ask if you could start captions so I can keep going here, please. Thanks. All right, so our objective today is to support you in making some STAR data decisions here. So our agenda is we're going to look at very briefly how to create groups in STAR. We're going to look at the instructional planning class report and some focus skills. We will talk about goal setting very briefly for progress monitoring. We will spend a little bit more time going through SPM goal setting. We are going to spend the bulk of our time looking at progress monitoring reports, talk about a new CBM Caregiver Report that's coming in the next week or two. Finish up by talking about some upcoming training and wrap it up there. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Before we jump into that, I wanted to let you know a couple things that we've been getting a lot of questions about. So I know that you may have been getting some, there's been a focus on the participation from some of the upper level leaders in the district. So I know principals had a meeting yesterday, and we've been getting some questions around participation numbers in CLIC. So we want to let you know, as we've said at every STAR Champion training, pretty much, I think, for the last couple of years, that failed practice tests are still not being counted toward participation in CLIC. I do not have an estimated date for when that development is going to be done, but that is not changed. And we've talked about that in depth at the last champion training, so I'm not going to explain it anymore here. If you want an explanation on it and what to do about it, you can go watch the previous champion training recording. We talked about it pretty early on in there, so you can look at the explanation there. The other thing that just came up really just this week, we were hearing that some people were saying that the STAR Math students who were participating in the STAR Math Spanish computer adaptive test were not counting towards participation for students who were eligible to take it. That was working last year. It'll be fixed soon. We'll communicate out in more details when it is. We think there was just a coding thing that broke or whatever in CLIC. So we hope to have that fixed today or tomorrow. So it should be good to go certainly for next week. But so I'm sorry for those of you who were having some confusion around that. If you have a lot of English learners who were taking that test, your numbers will probably adjust when we fix that code. Again, we'll send out that communication once it's fixed. Okay, so we're going to talk about creating groups in STAR. This is covered in STAR 102. So we are not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm going to go through these slides very quickly, and if you're a little overwhelmed that I'm not spending more time on them, then you can watch the STAR 102 recording. We'll have a link for that in our resources for the field, and I'm sure one of the assessment team members can drop the link in the chat. It is in the speaker notes. And if somebody could share the slide deck, if you haven't already, if you could drop that in the chat for everyone. So what is the purpose of creating groups in STAR? It's basically to, so our purpose is to create data-driven groups from the recent computer adaptive test data, so you can do targeted data analysis and intervention. What are some of the benefits of grouping? If you group students based upon similar percentile ranks or scale scores in the reading or math tests, it allows teachers to group students who have similar skills they need to focus on. And we're going to look at that in detail when we get to the class report. But teachers can view also identified focus skills for each group. They can also monitor progress of these groups through various reports, and we'll show you which reports you can do that. And you can also group students from the same class or across classes, which could be really helpful for special ed teachers or EL teachers in particular. So let's talk about how do you do that. And again, I'm going to go through these quickly. So you get into Renaissance, you click on reports, you go to the record book and manage groups. You click create new groups. I'm sorry, I'm not advancing the slides. Here we go. You got Renaissance, reports, record book, and then manage groups. Then click on create new groups. Then you're going to use the drop downs to pick the class that you want. You can pick a specific class. If you want to go across multiple classes, you can use this class link. If you want to pick various students from all over the place, you can click on students. You just get a whole list of students that you want to pick from there, you can. Those are, and you obviously pick the subject for the test you want. We're going to leave the benchmark as district, and you'll hit create group. So you can, the system's going to automatically make one group for you, and then you can add as many groups as you like. To rename the group, you just click in the box and you type whatever name you want. Students who are placed in groups will not see the name of the group. So you don't have to worry about, if you're naming it in something about intervention or a certain tier, that you don't have to worry the students won't see the group name. But you can make as many groups as you want. You're then going to see a list of all the students that you picked in the previous step, and you're going to see from their most recent computer adaptive test some information about their scale scores and their percentile ranks. These columns you can sort, and we highly recommend that you do either sort by the scale score or the percentile rank, so that you can group the students based upon their performance on the test. So you can see here, let me just spend a minute to talk about why you want to make sure you are ranking the students here. So when you are looking at various reports, especially if you're looking at the instructional planning report for class, which we'll look at in a couple minutes, it's going to recommend skills that the students are ready to learn. It is going to use the median scale score for whoever is in the group. So if you're looking at a single class, it's going to take the median score from all 30 students who are in the class. If you have some students who are high performing, some students who are low performing, it's going to look at the median score there. And what's going to happen is the skills it's going to recommend might not be appropriate for all of the students in the class. So in order to make sure that the skill recommendations are going to be appropriate for the greatest number of students, you're going to want to make your groups with students who are in close scale score ranges or percentile rank ranges. So you can see here on the slide, right, we have in this class a few students who are all in the intensive intervention. They're relative, it's a relatively tight bunching there. So those were all put in this one group. Then you can see there's some students who are all in strategic and only separated by like 16 scale score points, and they're in a different group. So you want to make sure that you are, if you're making these groups for the purposes of looking at skills or for interventions, things like that, you're going to want to pick students and put them in groups based upon their performance on the test. If you want to make a group just because you want to run a test activity report or a screening report, something just to see overall, you want to look at all of your English learners or all of your students who are getting some sort of special instruction, then you don't have to worry about grouping them by the scale scores or percentile ranks. But if you're looking for getting skill recommendations, you are going to want to group them by their performance there. Okay, so then once they're all assigned to a group, you'll scroll down and click on Save. And then you're going to get to see your groups that you created on the screen. So this example here is showing some groups that were made based upon color. You can always add more groups or edit your groups once you have created them. Okay, so now that you have a group created, when you are in certain reports, you're going to be able to search for results or run the report for that group. So you can see an example here of a dropdown where when you're picking the student set that you want to look at, you could look at all classes or pick a specific class. But if you click on groups, it will then show you a list of groups that you've created, and you can select one of those groups, and then you're going to run the report for your group. Okay, so here are the reports in STAR that you can use your groups. So all of these reports, when you run them, you'll have an option to select groups. It also applies for the CBM data insights, and we're going to get to that later in the presentation. So we are going to take a look. Well, before I get into a specific report, just want to make a couple reminders about groups. Staff who have school level access, which all STAR champions should, you can use groups created by any staff member in the building. But teachers can only use the groups they create. So unfortunately, if you have two teachers assigned to the same class and one creates groups for that class, the other one can't see those groups. So that is an unfortunate feature, potentially, depending upon how you have teachers assigned to classes. So keep that in mind. You might have to have, if you have two teachers assigned to class, they might need to create the same groups in order to be able to look at the data the same way if they want to do it independently. So just a couple of reminders about groups there. Okay, there are lots of useful reports in STAR for looking at data. I just want to focus right now on one report that can make your STAR computer adaptive test data more actionable, especially if you use the groups that you've created. So we're going to look at the instructional planning class report, and we'll talk about focus skills in relation to that report. This report, the instructional planning class report, becomes much more useful if you run it based upon your groups rather than a whole class. So how do you get to this report? From the report screen and screening and instructional planning, take the report from that screen there. And when you are looking at your dropdowns, you're going to select groups, and you can pick the groups that you've created and then hit update report, so it runs the report. So let's look at the report a little bit here. So this is what the top of the instructional planning class report would look like. It's going to show data for the whole group. Remember, I mentioned a couple minutes ago, it's using the median scale score and the median percentile rank, which is why we want to group students based upon performance. Gives you the lowest scale score in the group, the highest, the lowest percentile, and the highest scale score and the highest percentile rank for the group you selected. Below that in the report, it's going to start showing you some suggested skills. So you can see here that this is just the one little section of those skills. I'll show you some more in a second. But if you have students in the group with similar scores, then the skills that are going to show in this report are more likely to be appropriate for all of the students in the group. As I mentioned before, if you have a real wide range in your scores here, then the skills are not going to necessarily be as applicable for all the students in the group. So one takeaway I want you to understand is using groups with this report will make the skills more applicable to the students in the group if you're grouping them by their performance. Now, this is what the full report would look like for this particular class I ran. And there's a lot of skills here. So even though these skills might be more tailored to the students in my group because I arranged them by their performance level, I still might need some help here in narrowing down all of these skills. There's no way you're going to be able to focus on all of these skills at the same time. There's too much here. So what do we want to do to narrow this down a little bit more? So you can increase the utility of this report by narrowing down to focus skills. So this is a term Renaissance uses. We're going to talk about them in a minute here, but the focus skills are identified by a little lightning bolt here. Let's talk a little bit more about them. But before I explain what focus skills are, I want to let you know that when you run this report, if you don't want to see this entire list of skills and you want to see just the ones that are the focus skills, when you're running it, there's this option right here to check show only the focus skills. And then if you update the report, the list of skills that you pick will be only the ones that are the lightning bolts, the focus skills. So what are focus skills? This is coming from the Renaissance page. There's a link in the on the next slide in the speaker notes to where you can find this information. So someone from the team can drop it in the chat here. But focus skills are, I'm not going to read all the words on the screen to you. You can take your time later and read it. But basically, Renaissance has built learning progressions. That's how their computer adaptive tests are designed. They look at the Common Core curriculum, which we use. They look at the grade level, and they look at all of the different skills that need to be taught within that particular subject and grade. And what they have done is identified which of the skills in that learning progression are the most important, because they're the most foundational, they're most fundamental, they're the prerequisites of skills that are most important for other skills. So they have gone through and identified the skills that if you can't teach everything, if you don't have time to focus on everything, or you're trying to figure out priority, which one to focus on first, the focus skills are the ones that they're going to recommend, giving you your biggest bang for the buck when you're doing your instruction or especially intervention. So let's take a look a little bit more about what this looks like on the Focus Skills website. If you want to be able to dive into this a little bit more, you can. And again, the link is in the chat. It's also right here on the slide for you. So this is a graph. If you want to learn more about the focus skills, that's showing you we're looking at math here for each of the grades. And you'll notice each of these bars are color coded here. So these color-coded bars are going to line up with different domains. So right here, we see numbers and operations, algebra, geometry, and there's some others that just you're not seeing on the screen. And it's telling you, if you click, and in this example here, I'm hovering over the 8th grade, there are 21 focus skills that have been identified for 8th grade math. And if we click on the view there, we go in and we would see for math, 8th grade, the different domains and how many focus skills are aligned to each of those domains. If you click on the plus sign for any of those domains, it will list the specific focus skills aligned to that domain. So you can see for 8th grade math, in numbers and operations, the approximate and irrational, it's cut off there, rational number on a number line, that would be the one focus skill for 8th grade, numbers and operations. The other information on the screen is this position. The position is going to be where that focus skill falls in the entire learning progression. You can see that from pre-K to 12th grade, there are 1,102 focus skills identified for math. And this one that we're looking at here on the screen is the 641st one. Why does the position matter? How could that help you? I mentioned before, there's a learning progression, and skills build on each other. So if you are, again, trying to identify where to start, you would want to look at the earlier position numbers before going to a later position number, because the earlier position number is most likely a prerequisite skill or a foundational skill that you need before you can move on to later position numbers. I want to go back one slide here and just call out that I know this says Delaware on the screen. And if you are looking at focus skills on this website, you should look at Delaware. The reason for that is Pennsylvania uses the PA Common Core, but in Philadelphia, we do not use the PA Common Core. We use the National Common Core. Delaware uses the National Common Core. So if you want to see focus skills that would align up with the curriculum that we are using in terms of the Common Core, choose the Delaware here instead of Pennsylvania. They're pretty similar, but Delaware is going to be more specific for what we do in Philadelphia. So you can see now, if I'm running the report, that class report, and I've selected to just see focus skills, it narrows down the list of how many skills that I'm looking at. And I can use that position number if I need to really decide what do I want to do first. So what the takeaway here from this class report that we're looking at, the instructional planning class report, number one, grouping the students based upon their scale score or percentile rank, no worries, is going to help to narrow down the range of the skills to make sure that they're more appropriate for the students you pick, because their scores are similar. So when we're looking at the medium score, it's going to increase the likelihood the skills are relevant to you. But if you still want to be able to narrow down the list of skills even more, you can run it with just focus skills, or you can look at you run it for the whole list, but just look for those focus skills as the ones that would be most important, especially if you have students who are below grade level. So, this, if I ran this for it's 5th grade or 6th grade class, and I'm seeing 4th grade skills here, that's telling me, okay, these these students are behind. We want to be able to catch those students up as fast as possible. What's the way to most effectively do that? Renaissance is saying, if you use these focus skills, those are the most important in terms of being foundational to move them forward. That if you want to get them caught up as fast as possible, using the focus skills is the way to do it. So you still might look at this list and go, all right, well, that's 12 skills on the screen here. I can't do all of that. So how do I narrow down even more? So a couple other ideas. One thing to consider is, well, consider what you're teaching at the moment. If you see something on the focus skill list that you are currently teaching, that would be a great place to start. Or something that you just recently covered, that would be one area that you might want to pick from. You could also look at what prerequisite skills are needed for students to master what you're teaching right now. So you said, okay, we're teaching 5th grade or 6th grade skills. So none of these things are what I'm teaching now, but in order to do the skills that we're teaching now, they need these 2 or 3 prerequisite skills. So that could be an area to help you narrow down where to focus. And the other one, we've already talked about a little bit about where do these focus skills fall on the Renaissance learning progression. I showed you that on the previous slide here. This position tells you where in the progression they fall. So you can understand just kind of what needs to come first. So this isn't meant to solve all of your problems, but it's just some ideas that you might be able to narrow down, because we often will hear feedback on these reports that there's so many skills, I don't know where to start. So hopefully understanding grouping and understanding focus skills can be effective for your teachers now that they have CAT data from the fall. They can look at these reports, they can use focus skills, and they can use groups to be able to be more targeted in their instruction and their intervention. All right. I know I said I'm not going to stop for questions, but I will let the assessment team. Is there anything urgent that I have said wrong, messed up, or that people are really confused by based upon the chat?
I don't think urgent.
Okay.
Urgent, no. The answer to your question is no, no urgent. There are unanswered questions in the chat, but I think there are a few of us on the call that could probably get to them.
Okay. All right. And I'm sorry I'm not taking questions from the whole group, but I do want to make sure that we get through all the slides. And if we finish in time, I'll take all the questions you have. Okay, so want to talk about goal setting for progress monitoring. So now that we are wrapping up with the fall screening window, it ends on tomorrow. So you are most likely starting to shift, if you haven't already, to thinking about progress monitoring with your students. If you're going to be progress monitoring, you're going to want to set goals in the STAR system for your students. We touched on this in the last STAR Champion PD. We showed you how to set goals for very briefly, but we did talk about it there. And it is covered in great detail in the progress monitoring deck that we also shared last time. So I am not going to show you how to set goals for computer adaptive tests or curriculum-based measures. If you don't know how to do that already, please use that progress monitoring deck and it will go through in great detail for you. If you still have questions after looking at that, please email STAR Assessment. We are happy to walk you through, help you that. Also, your PESO reps can be very useful in that for you as well. And we're going to share PESO reps, if you don't know who they are, at the end of the presentation. Okay, so we did hit this, but just to make sure we're on the same page, when we're talking about progress monitoring for K-5 reading and K-3 math, you should be progress monitoring with the curriculum-based measures, the CBMs. Even if you're using the online adaptive programs, right? So online adaptive programs for intervention, even if you're using those, if you're in these grade bands here for these subjects, you're going to want to use STAR CBMs to progress monitor. If you're looking at 6 to 12 reading or 4 to 12 math, then you have an option. You can pick either to use STAR to progress monitor, or you can use one of the online adaptive programs as well. So if you are going to use one of the online adaptive programs, there is some additional information about that in the progress monitoring deck. So who needs to be progress monitored? We're looking at, for students in K-12, if they scored an intensive intervention on the early lit or the reading test, then you're going to want to progress monitor them. Students in grades 3 to 12 who scored an intensive intervention on the STAR Math computer adaptive should be progress monitored. And students in K2 who scored an intervention on 2 or more of the math CBMs would be progress monitored. So you have reading guidance here and math guidance on these second and third bullets. So again, I went through that quickly because this should all be review. But since you should be thinking about shifting to progress monitoring right now, wanted to just highlight for you again where you can find that guidance. What we are going to spend a little bit more time on is goal setting for SPMs, student performance metrics. So as you know, all teachers need to set SPM goals. They do not have to use STAR for their SPM goals, but we have a lot of teachers who do. And we want to make sure that if teachers are setting SPM goals with STAR, that they're setting SMART SPM goals. So this is what the guidance is meant to do, is to help teachers develop SMART SPM goals. So you can see here for teachers of grades K2, we're going to recommend that they use CBMs to set goals. For teachers of grade 3, it's up to you whether you're going to use CBMs or the computer adaptive tests. Teachers of grades 4 to 12, we would recommend using the computer adaptive test to set goals for both ELA and math. The goal statements we're going to review are recommended language that you can use. You don't have to use the language in these goal statements we're going to show you. You can certainly write your own, but I think going through these examples will help you understand how you can make smarter goals. And then the target recommendations we're going to review is based upon research. We analyzed data from the last couple of years, and we made these goals based upon performance that we've seen over the last couple of years. I forgot to mention that if this information was covered in the professional development that was offered last week on September 29th, there was an optional session that teachers could join, and this information was shared there. We're going to share that full presentation with you later, where we have a link to, well, there's a link on the screen here for the slide deck for that. We'll also share the link to the recording for that. Actually, the recording is going to be redone because it was cut off short. So that'll be coming soon, but we have the full slide deck. So if you did attend as a STAR champion that PD last week, I apologize for the repetition, but it won't be that long. And then we'll get to some new information for you. Okay, so we're going to talk first about setting SPM goals for curriculum-based measures for the CBMs. So there's really two types of goals that you'd want to look at. Either we're going to increase the percent of students who are scoring at or above, or we're going to decrease the percent of students scoring in intensive intervention. So for the first one, the goal statement you can see here, you can say the percentage of students scoring at or above and then you're going to pick a CBM. On whatever CBM will increase from a certain percentage from the fall to a certain percentage in the spring. And we're going to show you what we recommend for those percentages. If you're doing the goal to reduce this number of students in intensive intervention, your statement would be the percentage of students scoring in intervention on the whatever CBM will decrease from a certain percentage in the fall to a certain percentage in the spring. So these would be goal statements that you could use for SPM goals for CBMs. So this chart here is going to show you what we would recommend for the percentages you're going to fill in for your goal statements. So we're going to first look at increasing at or above. So this chart shows the CBMs that are required for the various grades here. We're looking at the ELA here. So this is letter names, letter sounds, etc. You can see the chart down there that tells you what they are. So what we'd be looking at here, if we're making a goal statement for letter naming, and you're looking to increase the at or above percentage, these numbers would be what you could choose from to fill in. So the percentage of students scoring at or above benchmark on the letter naming CBM will increase from 50% in the fall. So this number here, this 50%, would be the actual percentage for the students in the class. And we're going to show you where you can find that percentage in the STAR report, but the teachers are going to look at their STAR fall data. They're going to look at the percentage of students who scored at or above. And in this example, this hypothetical class, it was 50% of the students scored at or above. And then you would pick some number in this range for how much you're going to increase it. So in this case, if this teacher says, I want to pick 15% of an increase, so 15 plus 50 is the 65. So I'm going to increase from 50% getting at or above to 65 in the spring. Again, these numbers we didn't just make them up. We didn't just pick them out of a hat. We looked at actual performance over the last 2 years and looked at what was typical in the district. So we feel these are highly achievable goals. I started off by saying we wanted to make sure teachers were making smart SPM goals. What we found the first year that teachers are doing this, when we hadn't given guidance out for it, sometimes their goals were just not realistic. And some of them were setting really, really high goals that weren't really attainable. So we highly recommend you use these ranges here to pick from. You don't have to, but that would be the recommendation. So again, to understand the chart, you would say, okay, this range, if I'm looking at 35 to 40%, that's the number you'd pick a number in that range, and you'd add it to whatever your class's actual performance was to get your goal score, your goal percentage. And this is for increasing at or above. If we look here at that was for reading. If we look for increasing at or above for math, same concept. Here are the percentages for the different math CBMs. So an example here, if we're looking at the multiplication to 100, if the class had 30% who scored at or above in the fall, you could pick anywhere from 15 to 20%. So if the teacher says, I want to increase it by 20%, 30 plus 20 is 50, and that's how you would get the goal. Let's look at CBMs and reducing the percentage of students in intensive intervention. So this is for reading. So it's just going to be the same concept, but in reverse. We're going to look at the percent of students who scored in intensive intervention. And in this case, we're looking at passage oral reading. So, and pick a number in this range. In this example, the teacher's choosing to set a goal to reduce the percentage of students by 20%. So if we had 50% in the fall, our goal is to get 30% in the spring. So we're going to reduce it by 20%. That's for reading. And here's the chart for math. So please share these with your teachers if you have teachers who are using STAR to make SPM goals for CBMs. Let's talk about SPM goal setting guidance for the CATs, for the computer adaptive test. So the first two are the same. You can still look at increasing the percent of kids at or above, and you can look at reducing the percent of students who are in intensive intervention. But when we're talking about computer adaptive tests, we add a third option, which is to set a goal based upon SGP, or the student growth percentile. So an example goal statement using SGP would be blank percent of students will earn a 50 SGP or above when measuring growth from the fall to the spring. So right now in the fall, students have completed the computer adaptive tests. They don't have an SGP yet for this year because you need at least two tests to be able to do that. So you can't look at an actual percentage of kids right now. So let's look at what we recommend for the different types of goal settings for CAT. So first, let's look at the increase at or above. Same concept here. We could see for all the grade spans, it's actually the same recommendation of 5 to 10%. So you would say, all right, if in my current fall performance, we had 40% of the people who were at or above, I'm going to choose to increase that from 5 to 10% by the spring. If I'm looking at reducing, same, we're recommending 5 to 10% in terms of what you would reduce of the percentage of students in intensive intervention from the fall to the spring. Let's look at the SGP. So here's the ELA recommendations. The math recommendations are the same, the 50 to 55%. So the idea here is you would pick a number. You don't need to know what their fall performance would be. At this point, you're just going to say, okay, I'm going to say, if I pick the upper range, 55% of students will earn a 50 SGP or above when measuring growth from the fall to the spring. We're going to show you in a report how your teachers will be able to determine whether they hit the goals once they get to the winter. And then obviously the spring is when you're measuring to, but in the winter, they could measure their progress. So SGP, you're only using 1%, and you're going to pick it right from the chart somewhere in that range. And you're looking for students who will earn a 50 SGP or above. Why 50 SGP? Hopefully you remember that 50 is the number that Renaissance is saying is the minimum SGP that students need to be making a year's growth. So as they measure growth, 50 or above are students who are on track to make a year's growth or more. If students are having an SGP below 50, then they are not making a year's growth, or the test is saying that they're most likely not making a year's growth, and they're going to be falling further behind. So that's why we're looking at least 50 SGP or above. Okay, so let's look at the reports in STAR very quickly that can help your teachers set these goals. So first, we're going to look at if you're setting goals for the computer adaptive tests, you're going to want to look at that STAR screening report. The STAR screening report, this just shows you how you get there, okay? You can run it for, in this case, if your teacher is setting it, they're going to want to pick their class. They're probably not going to want to pick a group. But you can see here that you can view this for a group if you wanted. You can look from the fall, the winter, the spring, etc. You can look by whole grades. You can look for all the classes for a teacher, however you want. But the screening report, excuse me, if you look here, this is the top of the screening report, but it's the bottom of the screening report that you are going to use if you're setting a goal to increase that or above or decrease intensive intervention. So this teacher, and when I'm looking at this class from the fall, they had 21% of their students in the class who scored at or above. And they had 58% of their students who scored in intensive intervention. So if the goal is to increase the percent at or above, this is the starting percentage. If the goal is to reduce the intensive intervention, this is the starting percentage. So if we use those numbers of 21 and 58, if we were to look back here at our goal setting for CATS, if I'm looking at increasing the percentage at or above, the number I'm going to fill in here would be that 21. And if I'm looking at reducing, the number I'd fill in here would be the 58. So you can use the screening report to get your starting percentages for setting your SPM goals for computer adaptive tests. The growth report is what you would use for the SPM, if you're setting a SPM goal for SGP. So in the STAR growth report, at the bottom of the report, there's this summary table. And the summary table is going to tell you how many students met the expectation of an SGP of 50 or above. So you cannot run the growth report until you have at least the tests from a fall and from the winter. So in the winter, if a teacher runs this report, they would be able to see how many students hit the SGP growth expectation of 50 or more. Now, it's important to remember when you are determining the percent of kids who hit the SGP goal, that you want to only be looking at the students who actually have an SGP score because they have 2 or more computer adaptive scores from different windows. So here, I can see that there are 33 students in this class, but the summary tables only show me data on 21 of them. And that's because only 21 of the 33 students in this class took both a fall and, in this case, a winter computer adaptive test. The other 12 students didn't take both tests and therefore don't have an SGP. So, of course, they didn't meet the expectation because they didn't even take the test to get an SGP. So when your teachers are calculating percentage of the percentage of students who met the expectations of that 50 SGP or more, they shouldn't do 9 divided by 33. They should do 9 divided by 21, because the 21 are the actual number of students who have SGP scores, and the 9 is the number of those 21 who met it. So if that doesn't make sense, definitely let us know. We're happy to walk through it a little bit more, but this is not something that you're going to really, your teachers will be able to, like I said, in the winter, they can run this to see how they're progressing. And in the spring, they'll run it again. And that's how they'll be able to come up with the numbers for their SPM goal if they're using SGP. All right.
Jeff, can you repeat one more time? So 21 students did receive, that's why we only count did receive SGP, other 9 did not receive at all.
So in the class has 33 students, and out of those 33 students, only 21 of them took both tests. So only those 21 have an SGP. Out of those 21, 9 of them actually met it. You could do the math of 9 over 33, but it would give you a lower percentage. You could argue that you should be getting all your kids to do both tests, so you should really do it out of the lower number, or excuse me, out of the higher number, the 33, but it would give you a lower percentage. So it's more favorable for the teachers to be only using the number of students who actually took both tests, which in this case would be 21. Does that help clarify?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for the question there. Okay. I went through that. If you want a little bit more in-depth explanation of the SPM goal setting, you can use the slide deck that's linked there from that P that it wasn't on 9.9, it was 9.29, sorry. We will, like I mentioned, have a recording available soon because the one that was done was a little bit short. The slide deck does have built in, it's got other things in it besides looking at SPM goal setting. It talks about using like a STAR data protocol. It's a very helpful tool for walking teachers through how to analyze their data. So if you are looking for some insight or advice or guidance on how to work with your teachers to analyze their fall data, you can look at that slide deck. You can use the slide deck with your teachers. You could take parts of it that you like, and that might be helpful for you, not only for SPM goals, but just for analyzing fall data as well. Okay. I want to spend a little time talking about progress monitoring. So we, as I mentioned, right, a lot of you are shifting. That's where your focus with STARS should be shifting towards progress monitoring at this point. So we want to just touch on the reports that are available for progress monitoring. So we're going to first look at the STAR Student Progress Monitoring Report. As a reminder, we have a link here to the teacher guide to STAR reports. We went over this in the fall STAR Champion, so I'm not going to go through it in detail. But if you need help understanding how to navigate to picking which STAR report you should look at, that teacher guide is going to be helpful. It's organized around a series of questions. What is it you want to do with the data? What are you looking for? And then it'll recommend which report will do that for you. So just wanted to give a plug to that guide again. So in order for the progress monitoring report to work, students first have to have goals set. So you need to set goals first, and then the progress monitoring report will show how they're performing in relationship to those goals. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going to go through how to set goals, but it is in the progress monitoring slide deck, which we referred to and linked earlier. And this report here is only for the computer adaptive tests. We will look at the ones for the CBMs in a little bit. Okay, so this is an example of what the progress monitoring report would look like. This is somebody who I picked one that's got lots of data. If you set a goal and start progress monitoring next week, you're not going to have as many data points, but just wanted to illustrate the point here. So let's walk through what this report is showing here. So on the y-axis, we have the scale score. On the x-axis, we have different time periods. We are looking at this report, in this case, over a year time here. Each of the circles represents a test event, and the circles are color-coded based upon the benchmark category the student earned when they took the test. In the live report, if you hover over one of those dots, it will tell you what the student's actual scale score was. The yellow dashed lines here are intervention lines, and this identifies the date of an intervention program. It's basically the date that you've set a goal. So when you set the goal, that starts the intervention line. You can see there are 2 yellow lines on here. So that means that a goal was set at this point in time, and then later another goal was set at that point in time. So that's what those intervention lines mean. The trend line is statistically calculated after the student has 4 or more tests. And the system is basically saying, okay, based upon those 4 or more tests, it calculates what it expects the student's performance is going to be over time. The greenish blue line here, the teal line, is the goal line. So this represents the student's expected growth towards their goal. So the goal is represented by the star. So essentially here, at this point in time, they set a goal. And the goal they set was for around, that's like a little less than 1,100. Excuse me, 1,100. No, I was right the first time. So that's what goal they set. They set the goal to be a whole year goal. This goal line is basically say this is what we expect the student's path to be. The trend line shows more of what their actual performance is going to be. So this report just gives you an idea of when did you set goals, how's the student progressing towards the goal, are they expected to meet the goal or not. If after 4 or more progress monitoring events, you can see the student is really off track to hit their goal, then maybe it's reconsidering what either the goal or the intervention program that's being used. If it's not working and they're not progressing fast enough. The opposite could be true. If their performance is far exceeding, expected to exceed where their goal is, then maybe it's increasing the goal to be more aggressive. Different options of how you want to use the report based upon the student performance. But this is the progress monitoring report for computer adaptive tests. For the computer adaptive tests, this is really the only progress monitoring report. So let me pause here for a second, and I actually want to show the rest of the report. Sorry. This is the top of the report. The bottom of the report is going to, for the student, show every single time they took a test, what their scale score was, their percentile rank, and their SGP, and their growth rate, which is their scale score divided by the number of weeks since the goal was set. This is a lot more information that might be useful instead of just looking at the chart. Notice that an asterisk denote it was a progress monitoring test. Essentially means it just happened outside of the screening window, and it was the shorter progress monitoring version of the test. All the scores, whether they were progress monitoring or not, count the same way on the report. It's just indicating which ones were progress monitoring. Okay, so before we go to a breakout here, I do want to just pause and ask if there are questions on the progress monitoring report or the goal setting SPM stuff that we did. So from the chat.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
As we fill out SPM, is STAR both locally developed and district designed?
I don't know if I'm not understanding the question. Is STAR both locally developed and district designed?
That's Maureen Rhyme Santiago, if you're here. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So on the platform in Cornerstone, we have the opportunity to choose under student data, evidence, and performance measure, and then we can choose all that apply. So the choices are locally developed school district rubric, because I chose STAR CBM.
Okay.
District design measure and examination. Nationally recognized standardized test, and so forth.
Yep, gotcha. It's not locally designed.
Okay.
It's not a district one. This would be a nationally recognized.
Nationally
yeah.
recognized standardized test. Awesome.
Yep,
Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for clarifying the question for me. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up, Nina.
Yeah, when we're looking at STAR and we're looking at percentile ranks and things like that, those are based upon nationally normed data. So yeah, STAR is as nationally normed. That would be, I think, the best option to pick out of that list there.
There's one other
go for it.
SPM
Yep.
question. Are teachers creating an SPM for both reading and math? So 2 SPMs?
I believe they have to create one for both. Can somebody verify that for me? A teacher leader who knows with SPM goals? I think you have to do for both, or is that not true? Does anyone know?
That's not true.
Only-
You just have to do
Just
one.
do one?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you for
if you don't
clarifying.
do it, you won't see the growth data, right?
So
You
let
don't
me
do it, you won't see the growth data. right?
let's clarify here for a second what we're if you don't set a goal in the STAR system, then you won't see growth data. And everybody should be setting goals for it. All of your teachers should be setting a goal in the STAR system for the purposes of using STAR. If we're talking about using STAR for SPM goals, which are different, right? So SPM, right, the student performance metric, teachers do not have to use STAR for that. So teachers should be setting goals in STAR regardless of whether they're using it for their SPM goal. If they're using it for the SPM goal, SPM goals need to be set only for reading or math is what the clarifying point there. So you don't have to do SPM for both reading and math, but teachers should be setting goals in the STAR system for both reading and math independent of SPM. Does that make sense? Okay, that was a bad question to ask when I can't see you and you're not you're on mute. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, please come off mute and ask for further clarification.
It makes sense, Jeff.
Thanks.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Hello.
It makes sense. And the SPM is in a content specific. So in other words, if I'm teaching English, I have to make an SPM in English. If I'm teaching math, I have to make the SPM in math. If I am working with STAR data as my SPM, then if I'm doing English, then I would do reading. And if I'm doing math.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alana. Yeah, and certainly more clear for high school, right? When teachers are teaching a specific subject, elementary. So thank you. When I was speaking, I was not thinking, I didn't speak from a high school perspective there. So thanks for clarifying.
It's okay.
Okay. Patrice, hello. I see your hand.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
put it in the chat, but I don't know if they saw it.
Okay.
So last year, the question that we had over and over again, the suggested percentiles that you give us for the goal. So there's different levels of the goal that the teachers can aim for. So it's like, I think it's basic, proficient, and distinguished. Are these numbers that are normed, are they for the proficient goal, or is there not really? Because that was something that at different building levels, people were saying, no, that's distinguished. No, these levels are set for proficient. So what do you recommend?
So we purposely did not wade into that territory because there is supposed to be some teacher discretion. And that is partly why we gave a range of the numbers, but we did not want to specify a specific number to be distinguished or whatever. So it is possible different schools could be using different things, but we would refer you to school leadership to decide how you guys want to be measuring and evaluating teachers. So, because we are definitely, right, I am wading into somebody else's territory here, right? So this is, more leadership evaluation, right? So when we spoke with them a couple of years ago, when we realized people were using STAR for it, we wanted to help make, like I said earlier, we were finding some people were making goals that were just not realistic, and we wanted to help provide some guidance to make them more realistic, but we aren't going to specify what's distinguished, what's in a different level. So thanks for asking though. Okay, Nina, anything else urgent in the chat? Because I do want to make sure timing wise that we move on for the other stuff.
I think that urgent is an opinion. There are questions in the chat that I don't know the answer to, and I'm gonna just say it out loud. I said in the chat, I've recorded your questions. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to ask Jeff when we have time for questions at the end. If we don't have time or you have to leave earlier, we will email the answer to you. So I wouldn't call anything in the chat urgent. Yeah. No.
Bad terminology by my point. I meant the things that were really pertinent to what we have that are, deal breakers here. But yeah, we're good. All right. So let's move on here. So, okay, Nina, if you could get breakout room set up, I'd appreciate it here. So what we're going to do at this point, almost everything else we're going to talk about is related to CBMs. And for my high school colleagues here, I don't want to waste your time. So if you are at a school that does not administer CBMs, in a minute, Nina is going to make breakout rooms that give you an option to join. Do not join the breakout room if you administer CBMs at your schools. You have to, unfortunately, stay here with me. If you are a school that does not administer CBMs, then you can join the breakout room. And Nina's going to walk you through a couple other slides, but you're going to get done a little early probably. So,
Jeff,
yes,
I
Nina.
don't have access to create rooms. I think once I made you the host, somehow I lost.
All right, let me do that here. Let participants choose one breakout room. All right, so. All right, you should hopefully now see on your screen the option to join. And remember, you're joining if you don't do CBMs. So please do so now. All right. So let's keep going for those of you who are still here. So remember, join the breakout room if you don't give CBMs. If you want to hear about CBMs just for the fun of it, you're welcome to stay. Okay. There are additional progress monitoring reports, a lot more progress monitoring reports for CBMs. So we went over the one that is available for computer adaptive tests. Let's look at CBMs. So first we want to direct you to the CBM Data Insights. So if you go to the reports page and you click on CBM Data Insights, this is part of what the screen looks like. There's 3 different CBM insights. The one that we're going to look at here is, are my interventions working? And it's going to show you a percent moving up for reading English, reading Spanish, and math. You can see here, what does the percent moving up mean? It's based upon the recommended screening measure in STAR, but you can run it for any CBM, so we'll show you that in a minute. And it's the percentage of students who scored in the intervention benchmark category in reading or math, or the alert if they're doing the Spanish one, in the previous screening window, and who have scored in a higher benchmark category on that measure in the current screening window. So this is one that is after we have fall data. Once you start getting additional data, you can see how are students moving between different benchmark categories. So if you're looking at this CBM Data Insight and you click on the Explore the Data link, it will bring you to a screen that looks like this. And this is showing you, you have, in this example here, we ran the report. You can run it from last spring to this fall. So if you want to see, okay, we just finished our fall screening window for this year. How were kids doing based upon where they were at the end of last year? So what this would show you is, okay, you had in the spring last year, you had 180 students who were at or above. Out of those 180 students, here's where they are after the fall. 149 of them stayed at or above, but 21 of them dropped to on watch, and 10 of them dropped all the way down to intervention. Out of the ones who were on watch, there was 13 who moved up, 7 who stayed the same, 4 who moved down, etc. So this is can be run for whole school, whole grades, classes, different groups, things like that. But if you've been around since we were doing AIMSweb, you remember that tier transition report, it's very similar. It's giving you an idea of how students are progressing over time between the different benchmark categories. If you click on any of these blue, links here with the students, it will allow you to go down to the individual students. So you can see if we're looking at students who were in intervention and state intervention from last year to this year, who are those students? And okay, these are the students who last spring were in intervention, and this fall they're still in intervention. So if you want to see, who were the kids who were doing really well last year, and then something happened over the summer and they forgot everything, or what's going on here, you can look at those students. So the CBM data insights, are my interventions working, is one way that you can monitor progress. Right now, in the example I'm showing is from spring to fall. Once we get to obviously the winter from this year, you can run it from fall to winter. And that would be something that would help you see were the intervention programs you put in place after the fall, how are they working? Were you have students who are improving or not? So that is the one way to progress monitor with CBMs, is the data insights. And that's, remember, you go to reports, CBM data insights, how you get there. Another option is you can progress monitor CBMs via the record book. So when you're in the record book, you can click on, once you have set a goal for a student, and if you don't know how to set a CBM goal for progress monitoring, you can look at the progress monitoring deck that we shared earlier. But when you click on the track goal, then it will bring you to a report that looks very similar to the one we looked at before for the computer adaptive test. It's going to show you the correct per minute on the y-axis. Y-axis. It's going to show you the dates on the x-axis. When did you set the goal? What is their goal that you set? And it's going to have a circle anytime that they take the specific CBM. This person chose to set the goal for addition to 10. You can see at the top the start and end date of the goal, what the actual correct per minute goal was. It gives you, the expected rate of improvement, and once they actually start taking more than one assessment, it will show you their actual rate of improvement. So this is, and then at the bottom here, you can see, it lists the other CBMs they've taken in addition to just the addition to 10 there. So we got there by clicking on track goal from the record book. Obviously, you can't track the goal until the goal is set. How do if you see the add goal, then that means that the student is recommended for progress monitoring. You can click right there to add the goal. You can see this student doesn't have track goal or add goal. It's because they did really well, and progress monitoring is not recommended for them because they were scoring at or above already. So using track goal brings you to this chart. That's one way to do it. Another way is, so in the record book, instead of clicking on track goal, you can click here on the monitor progress. So again, this doesn't show up until a goal has been set, but once it's set, you can click on the monitor progress and it brings up this little pop-up here. And then you can click right there on the addition to 10 progress. And that will bring you to a chart that looks like this. So it's similar, but it's got a couple of unique features from the one we looked at previously. So I still have correct per minute over here on the Y, the timing on the X, but here there is a dashed line that shows what is the score needed to get at or above. And you'll notice that changes between the fall, winter, and spring. That's because for this particular CBM, obviously as you progress over time, it expects the student to be able to at or above increases, right? What do they need to know and be able to do to be at or above should increase as the year goes on. So this report is the only one out of the CBMs that shows you where the student is in relationship to the at or above benchmark. It also shows you the actual performance on the test in terms of how many did they get right, how many did they attempt and got wrong, and you can see again the goal and the goal line. You can see down here a little bit more detail about it. And then if you there's two places to get to this additional detail. So if you want to see, okay, the kid got 6 right, 6 wrong. Well, I want to see what did they actually get right? What did they actually get wrong? You can either click on the details down there, or from this screen, you can click on the details, and then you can see which ones the student got wrong, which ones they got right, and which ones they didn't even attempt yet. So this allows you to really dig in if you want to get real granular in the data. But this is how this report here is called the measure chart. And you get to the measure chart either by clicking on monitor progress. You click on monitor progress and do that there to get to the measure chart. And if you want to see the actual student performance, you would click on either details here, or you would click on the details down here. Okay, so that is the measure chart. The last way we're going to talk about for progress monitoring with CBM is a little bit more involved, so I'm not going to walk through it, but is something that has been, we shared this last year, so if you've been around as a champion, you hopefully saw this last year, but we often get a request for, how do I see all of the CBM scores for students in one place? And how do I see it for all of the students in the class in the same place? There is not one of the deficiencies in the STAR system is that there's not a report that you can see, show me all of this kids taking CBMs all in the same place. So it takes a little bit of work in Excel, but you can essentially download a report, and through some sorting, you can come up with a list that would be like this. It would show you, okay, for this student, every instance of a CBM, so that they took, and their scores, so you can see progress over time in their CBMs. You could also, if you want to sort this to just so show me every kid in my class who's doing addition to 10, or various ways you can sort it. But if you have been struggling to find a way to get all of the CBM scores, there is a 5-minute video tutorial which walks you through how to do this. You download it from the system, you follow along with how to sort based upon what the video is telling you, and you can come up with a chart which might be very useful to you if you've been struggling to find that information. So that is another way that you could use to progress monitor if you wanted to be able to see a nice table like this, how many times the kids have taken it and how are they progressing each time they did it. So that is the final way to look at CBM progress monitoring that we're going to cover today. Okay, almost done. So there is a new CBM report that's coming. It's called the CBM Caregiver Report, and it is it's brand new, and it's supposed to be coming sometime next week. Would certainly by the 16th. Renaissance hasn't told us exactly yet when, but we expect it by the 16th, which is not Monday, but the week after that. So this is we already have a family report that you can use for the computer adaptive tests, but there isn't a family report that exists for CBMs, but now there is. So this, how would you get there? You go to the record book, click on the CBM assessments, view reports, and then it won't be there yet. If you look today, it's not there, but in about a week, you'll see this STAR CBM Caregiver. And there's different options you can pick to filter it and run the report, but it's going to look like this. Sorry, it's not the best quality, but this is, we're only dealing with screenshots because it's not a live report yet. So what this is going to show you, okay, for the student, the report's only going to run for the recommended screening measure. So hopefully you remember that Renaissance basically picks one CBM per grade and subject. That is the screening measure, they call it. And they're saying, hey, if you're going to give one CBM and only one CBM, the screening one is the one you should do. In Philadelphia, we obviously do more than just one, but the one that's going to show at the top of the report is this recommended screening measure that Renaissance chooses. And it's going to show here the scores for the different benchmark categories, right? So this would be intervention, on watch, at or above. And then it shows the student's actual score. So the student got 22 correct per minute, and that puts them, right here in this on watch. And then how do they do in the winter? How do they do in the spring? So this is designed to show families as a start, conversation starter, or parents who are looking for more information for how their student is progressing related to the CBMs. The graph at the top is going based upon the screening measure, but the chart at the bottom is going to show all of the CBMs they took, not just the one that is related to the screening measure. So at the bottom of the report, there's also this nice guide here to give them some useful terms to know. So what does correct per minute mean? What are these benchmark categories? But then it also gives them some recommendations for things they can practice at home. So just don't know how you all decide to share data with families. Wanted to let you know this is coming. We think this could be helpful for having some conversations with parents. Maybe it's something used at parent-teacher conferences, or if you have parents who are asking for some more information about how they can support their students, this could be a report that you might want to share with them. Okay, wrapping up here, we just want to talk about some additional training and support opportunities for you. Priscilla, are you here, or did you go to the breakout room? Okay, so
I think she went to the breakout room.
Yeah, that's
Jeff.
fine. I figured as much, but that's okay. So hopefully you were here last, and when we did this in the fall, you got to meet Priscilla. Priscilla works for Renaissance, the company that does STAR. She is our district consultant, and her sole job is to help you. She's here to support schools. So if you, she can talk to your leadership team, your teachers. She can come to grade group meetings. She can come to work with one teacher. She can work with the whole staff. With anything related to STAR. So if you are interested in booking an appointment with Priscilla, you can use this link here. She also holds office hours where she's just there for you to stop by and ask any question. So anybody can drop in and ask any question they want. So if you have a teacher who's, needs some extra help, or you have a whole grade group who wants it, you can all do office hours, or you can book something specific with her. In addition to Priscilla, we wanted to give you a heads up for some additional PD coming up in the future. Next week, there is a SPTL meeting. I know not all of you are SPTLs, but a lot of you are. There is a STAR choice session that's going to be offered at that meeting. And the focus of that session is going to be on using Click and looking at STAR data in Click. So that's coming up next week. There is in November a PBOS training. PBOS stands for the Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. If you are familiar with PBOS and you want to know how PBOS and its connections to STAR, you can join one of those sessions that will be available in Cornerstone soon. So I would say in like the next week or so, you can look in Cornerstone, go to the events calendar, look at November 8th and 9th, and you can sign up for that session if you're interested. And then probably in the middle of December, we'll have another STAR Champion PD session. We'll let you know a specific date when we have it. All right. Please, we're going to drop the attendance, the survey form for you in there. Always say it every time, but I would love your feedback. I want to know what did you like, what did you didn't like, what are additional topics you want to hear about, what was useful, what wasn't useful. So please fill that out. We do definitely read those and try to improve each time. And as a reference, again, all sorts of resources available to you. We went through these in detail in the fall. So if you're not sure what any of these are, you can ask, or you can watch the fall presentation, but all sorts of resources there. I mentioned in the beginning, I would share who your PESO rep is. So if you are looking for some support with data, it can be STAR or other data, but your PESO reps are experts in STAR and data use in your schools. So you can reach out to them if you're looking for some support as well. And you can always email STAR Assessment with any questions. And there's some other information for getting help directly from Renaissance. All right. So that is the prepared material for today. Thank you so much for those of you who are still here. Appreciate you hanging on, and hopefully that was helpful to you. We have some time now. We'll just open it up to questions. So anybody have questions?
Yeah. It's Faye. I do have a few that I just want to cover from the chat.
Sure, go for
Sorry.
it. Yeah.
That might cover some of these. So just step back a minute to the caregiver report.
Mhm.
They want to know if it covers K-3 and if it will be available in Spanish.
This is going to cover all grades that do CBMs. So it would be K-5, K-3 for math, K-5 for reading. I don't think it's going to be available in Spanish, but I'm not positive of that. So that we'll have to take that, as a follow-up. But I don't believe in our conversations with Renaissance that they mentioned this is available in Spanish yet. They usually, unfortunately, are a little, the English version comes out first and then later the Spanish version does. If I'm wrong, then we'll let you know, certainly when the report comes out, if it's available in Spanish as well, but I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to confirm, because this has been an issue in previous sessions, I want to drop the attendance form, which was not in the deck. So I just want to be sure.
Yeah, you can drop it. Yeah, so
Okay.
it was in the deck. No, was it not linked there?
No, not for the participants. So I'm going to drop it now.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Madeline.
I do have a quick question. We were just wondering, we do have a few students, EL students, that are exempt from taking the reading, but not the math. Now, does that reflect as not being 100% complete for the teacher because the student is taking the math and exempt from the reading? Or is there something on our end that we need to do to show that that student is brand new to the country and is exempt from taking it?
Sure. So way back in the beginning, I mentioned this. Where'd it go? There currently is Click is not currently calculating correctly for students who are exempt from because they're English learners. It was last year. It's not this year. There is some code that got broke somewhere. So there's been discussions going on today about it. I expect it's going to be fixed in the next day or so. But that should do two things. One, for students who were allowed to take the Spanish version of the math test because they're within 3 years. And it should also account for students who are exempt because they're from the reading because they're a first-year English learner. So if you are looking in Click now, it's not properly accounting for that. I think by next week it will. We will email champions out once that has been fixed. So that we just discovered that it's like 2 days, yesterday. I don't remember the run, but we just figured that saw that it wasn't working right. We're working on fixing it. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
I have a question, Jeff.
Hi.
Hey, thank you for all the hard work and your patience as we go through this. Okay, so
I can say the same right back to you. Thanks for all your hard work and your patience. Thanks.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm looking for the cut scores, the benchmark scores, not for the CBMs, but for the CAT and the early literacy. Because although we progress monitor using the CBMs, which is appropriate, we also, what I think the district looks at is our CAT and our early literacy to see the number of students that are advanced, proficient, basic, below basic, approaching, all of those things. So where can I find those numbers so that I can include it on our data wall to say, all right, this is what we're looking for. We're going to use the CBMs to help us guide closely our weekly instruction, right, for small groups, and use that as a means to get to the larger portion of the CAT and early literacy, right? But I'd like to have those numbers.
Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest way to do that is based upon the percentile rank. And are you looking for scale score specific or the percentile rank? Because percentile rank is easier. So,
right. So what I found is something, and I don't know if it's old or what have you, but I found enterprise, benchmark, and cut scores. But then the caveat is that it adjusted or changed. So something that looks like this.
Hold on a sec here. I got you. You got a real tiny box on my screen.
Sorry.
Here. No, you're fine. Where are you? Let me pin you there so I can see. Why is it? No, I need to go to. Okay, so I don't remember off the top of my head where that is, where you're looking for specific scale scores to type to percentile. But that does change throughout the year. So that's why I'm saying you might want to not use the scale score, but you might want to use percentile.
Okay.
So I'll give you the percentile scores, and if you really want the scale score ones, shoot us an email. And I know it exists in STAR. I don't remember where it is, but for STAR reading, 1 to 9 is intensive intervention. 10 to
24.
24. Oh, hey, Priscilla, you back? Is that you?
Yes.
All right, 10 to 24, right? 25 to 69, and then 70 and above are so again 1 to 9 this is for math. 1 to 9 intensive, 10 to 24 strategic, 25 to 69 on watch, 70 and above is at or above. Now for reading, it's 1 to 9, 10 to 24, and 25 to 39, and then 40 and above is at or above. Okay. So the computer adaptive tests, the scale score that corresponds to the cuts between those percentile ranks evolves throughout the window, because essentially what it's saying is we would expect every week the student is learning more. So the scale score that they have to get to, let's just say, use at or above example, the score is going to keep increasing over time, because it's expecting like what at or above in the first day of school is going to be a different expectation of at or above on the last day of school, right? So if you had one cut score that was like at or if you need, I'm going to make it up, 1,000 to be at or above, it's expecting that the student is learning more as the year's going on. So that's always increasing. So the best we could give you would be a range of scale scores for the fall, a range for the winter, and a range for the spring. That would, but again, depending upon where in the window you are, those cut scores would be different. That's why I'm saying kind of percentile rank might make more sense, because the percentile rank cut scores don't change. To get to at or above in math, it's 70 percentile the whole year. But the scale score you need to get 70 percentile does change throughout the year. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I'm thinking we have cut scores for CBMs, right? And that's something tangible that,
because the CBMs, the cut scores for that change each screening window, but they don't evolve on like a daily, weekly basis. So the computer adaptive tests really do. It's not it it's really like every couple days. There, and I don't even have that information, right? Like Renaissance does, you know, they don't even provide it because it's ridiculous. It'd be like after like 2 days it's this, and then another 5 days it's that, and another 3 days it's this. Like it really is, you know, based upon some, you know, algorithm research stuff they've done. So the CBMs are more static. And it's actually why in the fall we kind of cautioned you around when you test your students for CBMs, because we have longer the windows this year, right? So our fall window is like 5 weeks, but then we go to beginning of December till middle of January, and then the spring window is beginning of April to like the end of May, like a 2-month window. If you test second graders in, you know, passage roll reading in the beginning of April, and you test second graders at the end of May, the cut score to be at or above is the same. But if you think about it, I would hope that a kid who had 2 more months of instruction was more advanced, right? Had learned more than the kid in the beginning of April. So it's actually with the CBMs, having those static cut scores is not as informative as the cut scores that evolve with the computer adaptive tests. I know it's cleaner in terms of thinking about it that way, but it's actually, you know, if you were testing some second graders at the beginning and some second graders at the end, you're almost not comparing apples to apples because they're being held to the same score, but the ones who tested at the end had a whole lot more instruction. So you would hope the ones who tested at the end, a lot more of them should have been doing better than the ones in the beginning, because they were being held accountable to the same cut score, but had different amounts of instruction. Whereas with the computer adaptive test, it's saying, hey, we're adjusting as we go because you got more instruction, you should be learning more, So if you want the static ones for the computer adaptive test, you got to use the percentile rank. Those should be your cut scores.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can I add 2 things?
Please, Priscilla, go for it.
So the first one was you're using Enterprise. You said the paper that you have is Enterprise. We actually moved to Unified scaled scores. So those are no longer valid. So that's number one. And then the second thing, if you really truly do want like some number, some tangible number, I did place in the chat earlier, someone asked a very similar question. If you go to the technical manuals for STAR Reading, STAR Early Literacy, STAR Math, there are conversion tables, and they put like an asterisk at the bottom of like a 3-page conversion table that is at the very beginning of that window, or the beginning of that particular month for the scaled score percentile rank kind of like meeting point. But again, to Jeff's point, it is a moving target throughout the month, throughout the window, throughout the year. So please take those numbers with a grain of salt. But if you do want at least a tangible number, feel free to look through our technical manuals that are hundreds and hundreds of pages long. But I did reference like exactly the location of each if you go back through the meeting chat.
Thanks so much, Priscilla. Yeah.
Thank
right.
you.
And just to illustrate that point, right? If the cut score to be at or above at the beginning was 1,000, and like a month later, a kid gets 1,000 and they're not at or above, then, well, wait, why? I made the cut score. Well, it's because the cut score changed, right? So those numbers would only be valid, as Priscilla mentioned, in the beginning. But all right.
I'm so sorry.
On that, but yeah, go ahead, Maureen.
Lorinda and Priscilla and Jeff, thank you. I am definitely, you all have like piqued my interest because wow, like I don't remember this. I feel like this was introduced in the very beginning. So I definitely will investigate, but do you know offhand the percentile rank CAT score for the early literacy?
The percentile for early lit follows the same as the reading.
Oh, it does. It follows the same as the reading.
Yeah.
Awesome.
1 to 9, 10 to 24, 25 to 69, or to
39.
39. Thank you. And 40 and above. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Wow.
Yes.
Good conversation.
Good. I'm glad. Who's next?
Jeff, I have a question. It's Karen. Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, I just couldn't find you on my screen. Hi, Karen. There you
Oh,
are.
okay.
I got lots of people out there.
When I checked our data insights reading participation,
Yes.
it was 82.6% because data was included for the 6th grade passage oral reading.
Okay.
And we know we only take it for grades K to 5. So I was wondering why it says 39%, 39 students weren't assessed, so it lower our participation rate and STAR. So what's happening?
Yeah, so keep in mind that when we are talking about participation rates in the district, we are not using participation rates that are coming from the STAR system. We would be using participation rates in CLIC because we are applying some different rules. So if you were looking at that CBM data insight for participation and running it for passage oral reading, the CBMs actually for reading go to 6th grade. We don't administer them at the 6th grade level. We only go K to 5. But if you picked that would be why, like the STAR system is saying, hey, CBMs are available for 6th grade. So I can't remember if you can pick only K to 5 in the drop down. I'm not sure. You might be, if you can't, then you would want to be looking at CLIC or figuring out a different way. But keep in mind when the official participation numbers that district leaders are looking at are from CLIC.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right,
I'm so sorry, but I had a tech issue and my computer shut down, so I'm operating off a phone. Is there any way somebody could drop the slide deck again? Because I didn't get to save it before it shut down.
Sure.
And I just want to make sure I have the information.
Yeah.
Yep. You doing
I'm so
it, or-
sorry about that.
I got
Thank
it.
you.
You're fine. Oh, I just did it to the wrong person. There we go. That should be for everybody there. Slide deck.
Jeff,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If a student finished their CAT assessments, and then for some reason they clicked on it again, and now it says in the system like complete by, and it tells you like 10-7. If you just let that run out, will it take the original score that they did during that open assessment window and count from participation?
Yes.
Or do they have to retake it again because they accidentally clicked on it? No.
They don't have to retake it again.
Okay.
Yeah. And if they did take it again, so if they participate once, they count once. If they took it 3 times, they still count once. And then in terms of performance, we would take the higher score for CLIC. So, but the answer to your question is no. If they started it but didn't do it, it's not going to hurt anything. You're okay.
It'll just fall off.
Yes. And you're also can always, if they did kind of take it and like took, only answered a question or two and didn't really try, there's a way to deactivate that. I don't have that stepper handy, but if you need it, you can either search and help or I think we probably have it in the resources for the field too.
Yeah.
Or shoot STAR assessment email. We'll get it to you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Go
Phillies. I like the background.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a problem actually today in PLC. We were creating the goals for the progress monitoring goals. And they created, one specific teacher created reading. And then she went to create her math and all the reading changed numbers. For example, she put in 9 students for reading. And when she created her goals for math, it dropped the reading students to 5. And I wasn't sure how to handle that.
That I don't know what that is. So can you, Priscilla, do you know? I can't hear you, but now
No, I don't know.
Okay, all right, yeah.
But I would say just email me. I'll put my email in the chat. And if you can send me like screenshots, or we can hop on a call and you can walk me through exactly what happened. What likely happened was they chose the subject, but actually chose an incorrect class. And then when if they teach math and reading, sometimes teachers think they're picking math, but they pick math, reading. And then when they go back in to do like reading, the groups have already been kind of like swapped.
Okay.
But that's just, the guess,
that would be my guess, but I definitely don't know until I'm actually able to see it. So I'm putting my email in the chat. Please feel free to just email me and we can set up some time to go to go through that.
Thank you.
All right. I can hang on a couple more minutes because I do have some other things I need to get done this afternoon.
I have a
will
question.
Take some more questions for a second. Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna lower my hand because I just realized it was off. Sorry. So my question has to do with the autistic support classrooms. Our principal has been pulling the reports, the participation reports, and noticed that there were children that were in there. So we began to do some of those assessments today with the children, but obviously many of our autistic support can't stay engaged for that CAT test and didn't pass the practice test. If that happens, what's our next step?
So, your next step with the student is you're done. You don't have to keep trying to test the student.
Okay. Okay.
But in terms of Click, you can see here this first bullet, and we talked about this a decent amount in the Fall Star Champion. Currently, students who fail the practice test, that is not counting for participation in Click.
Yes.
It should be. But it apparently is very elusive code. So
I guess that's, I'm just going to piggyback on that for a minute, Jeff, and I'm sorry. I get that, and I totally saw that, but the principals are doing these participation rates and keep resending that to the teachers. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can. I just have to keep reinforcing that, I guess is what you're saying.
And essentially, right, it's and I hate that we have to be in this spot, right? Like
I understand.
I hate it that there's data out there that's confusing, and it's a challenging message to get out. So, but we've been trying to communicate it out, and I have a feeling because of this renewed, like all of a sudden, like we've been getting participation emails out the wazoo because of the principal PD yesterday, right? So
yes, ma'am. Yes.
The associate superintendents call out people who got participation. All of a sudden, everyone's like, "What? I care about it now." So yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I know. So I imagine there probably is going to be some more central communication going out to calm the fears of all the principals who are panicky right now. But the best I can tell you right now, and I'm not trying to make light of it. So please.
I understand. I understand.
The best I can say is that is to explain that the rules are, and you can show them the guidelines for students with disabilities, and I don't have the link off the top of my hand, but we can get it and throw it in there. But in that, you can show the students who are exempt and the rules in there that say if the students who aren't exempt, but if they take the practice test and fail it, then they're done. And you can say, so these are the rules, and look, for these kids, we have 7, however many kids who they took the practice test, they failed it. So really those 7 kids should be counting as participation. Look at this slide from Jeff's presentation. It says it's not. So we did what we're supposed to. The numbers don't reflect it, but that's the best. I'm sorry to create you extra work, but here's the guidance. Here's what we did. Our numbers would actually be this if they were counting it, but they're not. That's why the number is lower.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Colleen, I see your hand up, and I'll do like 2 more here. Go for it.
Almost a piggyback off of the last thing about autistic support students. We have quite a few who are nonverbal.
Okay.
And so they are sitting there running the clock for the CBMs, so they get credit, but like a teacher, just kind of like marked the first one wrong, let it run, and then hit the end after the first one, and the kid got like a score of 100 something. And I've seen that in a couple of different cases where they had a few mistakes and the score didn't match what was in the system. But it's kind of a waste for these teachers to be just sitting there with nonverbals. They're never gonna, as long as they're not verbal, they're never gonna make progress on the test.
Yeah, and which test was it? The computer adaptive or a CBM?
The CBMs.
You don't have
Sounds like
I was gonna say you don't have the time limit on?
They did have the time limit, but the teacher sat there with the student doesn't respond. And then, they just let the time run out, and they clicked that the first one was incorrect, and they just hit the end
after the letter or whatever, and it gave them like a really high score.
So that's, you got to go in and edit it, right? So it's the right, Priscilla?
So it sounds like
Yeah.
what wound up happening was they got maybe one letter
Right.
or number correct, and the measure was ended prior to the 60 seconds running out. And so what the system does is, let's say the teacher finished it at 7 seconds. The system is going to extrapolate how many they got correct in 7 seconds and say that this is how many they would have gotten correct in 60 seconds, which is incorrect if they didn't say anything after the fact. So the teacher would have to go back into the system and edit the timer to reflect a full 60 seconds instead of 3 seconds or 4 seconds or 7 seconds. So that sounds like that was likely the issue.
Yeah.
They're not getting any correct because they're nonverbal, so they're not saying anything. They're just
So then the score would be 0.
Yeah, something is a little wonky there. If you could shoot, can you give us shoot us an example? Give us the student, the specific CBM, and we can dig in a little bit. I think it is related to what Priscilla said, where the timer was cut real short, so it's assuming even they got nothing right, they were like, well, but if the measure for some reason got cut off at only like 5 seconds, they're like, oh, well, they would have gotten 1 or more or however many right, even though they got nothing right in the first 5 seconds, where they would have gotten some right, so we just need to adjust the time, and there is a way to do that, but let's just make sure that that's what's happening first, and then hopefully that'll solve it. But shoot us an example, please. Star assessment, star assessment at Phil SD. Sorry, I'm getting tired. What's next? All right. Great. Well, thanks for those of you who hung on. These some really good questions, and really appreciate your time and dedication to it. And if you have anything else that comes up, you know how to get us. Star assessment at FLSD. So thanks so much. I'm gonna wrap it up and enjoy the rest of your day.